The crystal chandelier scattered light across marble that never felt warm, and in the shadows a small voice learned the shape of pain. 8-year-old Sofia Martinez clutched her wrist and tried not to cry while the woman in the red dress, Victoria Sterling, measured the damage in money, not bones. Elena's pearls rested on Victoria's throat like a quiet theft, and the house built for music had become a museum of silence. Sofia didn't know that breaking a shelf would crack something larger. She only knew the chair had wobbled, the desk had slid, the bracket had snapped, and her wrist now throbbed like a warning bell. Victoria stepped around fallen books as if stepping around a person. Clean up. Every corner. Your allowance will pay for repairs. $5 a week against a wall of leather-bound guilt. And when your father comes home, this never happened. When the BMW's tail lights disappeared, the mansion exhaled. Sofia tried to lift books with one hand and kept swallowing sounds that wanted to be sobs. This house once smelled of roses and piano polish, back when Elena taught scales in the afternoon light. Now Elena lived inside a carved box in Carlos's study, and Victoria had turned that box into a weapon no child could lift. The campaign had been slow, a photo moved to a hallway, a recipe box mocked, a scarf called living in the past. The counselor had said grief makes adults do strange things, but grief didn't explain why kindness vanished when doors closed. It didn't explain why chores became tests made to fail, wet floors to polish, bulbs too high to change, cabinets above refrigerators to organize. It didn't explain the way Victoria's voice could slice. Morning brought swelling and calculation. Urgent care got the show, concerned stepmother, accident on the swing set, bright purple cast. The nurse said children with repeated falls sometimes need investigation. A sentence slipped like a pin in a grenade and kept rolling across the tile. On the way home, Victoria rehearsed the script again. You fell. You were careless. I was excellent. But something inside Sofia was changing. Elena's courage, sealed in soft bedtime stories, had been growing roots through concrete. When Carlos's key turned and his shoes hit the marble, Sofia ran to him with more hope than plan. Victoria reached for the narrative, Carlos reached for his daughter. Tell me what happened, Mija. There, in the lobby of a life money couldn't fix, Sofia looked at the man she remembered and chose the most dangerous word available, truth. It wasn't the swing set, Daddy. Please don't let her hurt me anymore. A sentence like a match. A father like gasoline. In a house finally bright enough to see what lived in its corners, the mansion learned a new sound, a roar that didn't come from engines or applause but from a father's throat. Carlos's gaze moved from the purple cast to the woman in red, and years of numbness thinned enough to tear. Victoria offered reason, routine, her resume, her practiced concern. Carlos offered focus. Show me the library. In that cathedral of books, logic made pictures, 12-foot shelves, a delicate chair, a desk not meant for standing, a reach no child could make without risking a fall. She volunteered to dust these? The question didn't need an answer. Sofia asked permission to show other rooms. The bathroom where bruises bloomed behind porcelain. The kitchen's high cabinet above the refrigerator, where a fall had rung her skull like a bell, and the black eye that had been told as playground clumsiness. The ladder that shook, the light fixture too high, the punishment that always arrived with politeness. Patterns dethroned coincidence. Carlos felt two things at once, grief for what he had missed and anger at how it had been hidden. Victoria reached for the softest knife, doubt, and pressed. She's grieving. Children dramatize to regain attention. The pitch was perfect, the timing was not. Sofia's hand was small but steady in Carlos's. He remembered details he had edited out, flinches, apologies for existing, the way Elena's things kept evaporating into storage. He asked for evidence. He dialed Dr. Walsh. On speaker, the pediatrician said what no parent wants to hear, injuries increasing, signs of chronic stress, flinching during normal exams. Documentation existed where denial had stood. Morning turned legal. Marcus Chen listened like a surgeon and drew clean lines: divorce, protection order, criminal exposure, child endangerment, assault, coercive control. Carlos had spent the night reading statutes instead of sorrow, so the meeting moved like a machine. "Document everything," Marcus said. Dr. Walsh assembled charts that told a pattern no spin could erase. A child psychologist, Dr. Rebecca Martinez, gave Sophia safe words and safe crayons and watched the house appear in pictures: big shadows, small figure, a box on a desk that represented a mother and a threat. A private investigator walked backward through time and found other men, widowers with young children, relationships cut short when questions grew teeth. No charges then, only warnings that didn't echo far enough. The pattern wasn't a story, it was a strategy. Nursing brought proximity, grief brought access, money brought motive, a child's silence brought control. This time the circle would not close. The district attorney saw the file and didn't see theater, she saw elements, counts, priors and everything but name. The choice presented to Victoria was simple the way gravity is simple: plead and get years, or gamble and risk decades. Paperwork that once purchased clothes now purchased consequences. But justice is only one arm of healing. The other is time spent together doing ordinary things slowly and kindly until ordinary things felt ordinary again. Carlos took leave from a company that could run without him but could not father his child for him. Sophia learned that help me clean your room could mean together instead of test, that light bulbs could wait for ladders and adults, that breaks belong to wrists, not shelves. She learned to trust footsteps in the hall. He learned to sit on the floor and listen without fixing every sentence. Grief stayed in the house, but it moved to a chair and stopped driving. Carlos tried the next practical step: we're done pretending. Sophia, pack your favorite things. Victoria pivoted to the last weapon, intimacy, remembered, and found it had lost its charge. Mentioning Elena with contempt snapped the final wire. "Pack and leave," Carlos said, voice mild, decision iron. The door shook the chandelier again, but this time the tremor carried relief. In the foyer, Sophia asked the question that tests promises. "Are you really going to protect me?" Carlos held the weight that mattered. "More than anything. From now on, I will be where the danger ends." They returned with a key, a plan, and a promise that nothing in those rooms would define them again. The mansion was quiet like a stage after the audience leaves, lights cold, props still, the illusion waiting to be taken apart. Carlos carried 2 boxes, one for Elena's photos and recipes, one for ordinary things that meant we're staying. They began in the foyer, because a house tells its story at the door. Carlos took down a decorator's abstract and replaced it with a photo from the day Elena opened her piano studio. "If we're going to live here," he said, "the walls need to know our names." Room by room, they translated the house back into their language. In the study, Elena's carved box returned to the shelf with a white rose beside it, Sophia's idea, so it never looks abandoned. In the music room, the piano rolled onto its old rug. Dust lifted when the lid opened. Sophia pressed one key, then another, thin sounds at first, then clear. The library waited like a witness. The repaired bracket gleamed, a small scar no one could wish away. "We'll add a rolling ladder," Carlos said, "and a rule: you never climb it alone." He touched the desk where small feet had searched for balance. "I'm sorry," he told the wood, and the past. They found Victoria everywhere and nowhere: perfume in the guest bath, tidy labels on spice jars, a magazine folded to discipline routines. Carlos dropped it, gently, decisively, into a donate box. That became the afternoon's work, a respectful exorcism. They didn't smash or curse, they sorted. Things stayed if they held a true memory, left if they served a lie. By evening, the house had loosened. Elena's scarf hung from a peg, Sophia's first-grade painting, 2 figures under a bright sun, sat on the mantel. The rooms felt less guarded, more like themselves. Triggers came like uninvited guests. A glass slipped from Sophia's hand and shattered. Alarms surged, the ledger, the punishment, the lecture. She froze, apology forming. Carlos fetched a broom, handed her the dustpan, and crouched to her level. "Help me sweep? Then we'll buy new ones this weekend." They cleaned and kept eating. Later, Sophia stared at her hands. The world had stayed ordinary. That felt miraculous. Therapy gave names to invisible things. On Mondays, Dr. Rebecca wrote a bright card for the fridge. Stop rule. 1. Stop. 2. Breathe. 3. Say what I need. They rehearsed with small requests. Can you carry the laundry upstairs? Asked Carlos. Sophia checked in. Too heavy? Too soon? And answered out loud. The first times, I need help sounded like failure. The 10th time, it sounded like wisdom. New house rules became love notes. No ladders alone. No chores on stools. No chemicals without windows and an adult. Rain pinned them indoors. The metronome ticked slow and patient. Sophia ran left-hand scales while the right, tender from weeks in a cast, rested. When she stopped, she didn't apologize. Turn the page, she asked. They wrote a chalkboard charter by the kitchen door because children trust what they can see. Sophia printed, 1. People before things. Carlos added, 2. Truth before comfort. There were practical lines. No shoes on the piano rug, and one that mattered most, no secrets that make you small. Sleep took practice. The first nights back, Sophia woke at small noises, ice settling, pipes sighing, palm fronds tapping glass. Carlos learned the different silences of a child's fear. Sometimes he retold the story of her birth. The night Sophia slept until dawn, he made cloud-shaped pancakes. Breakfast, finally, wasn't an apology. School noticed what homes repair. Mrs. Hoffman sent a note. Sophia volunteered to read aloud today. She was brave and gentle with herself. We celebrated. The note went on the fridge, and Sophia traced the words like music. On Saturday they tended the garden. The roses had been trimmed by professionals who never paused to smell them. Sophia chose 3 to save: the pale pink Elena loved, a firework red, and a stubborn yellow that survived neglect. Dirt under her nails felt like belonging. When a thorn snagged her sleeve, she breathed and said, "We can sew that." At the clinic, the cast came off with a gentle buzz. The skin beneath was pale, the wrist thinner, the bones learning sun again. The nurse drew a tiny smile on her forearm. Freedom stung, then softened. Driving home, the ocean flashed like a secret. They stopped for lemons for Elena's bars. Powdered sugar dusted their fingers on the back steps. Before bed, Sophia set 1 bar beside Elena's box with the white rose. "For you," she whispered. The house answered the only way a house can, with light across floors, invitations instead of warnings, doors that meant welcome. When evening asked politely, Sophia sat and gave the piano both hands. The first notes were hesitant. The next ones found each other. A simple melody threaded the rooms and rested on the repaired bracket before dissolving into everything else the house now held. Courthouse mornings smell like dust, coffee, and things that must be decided. The security arch beeped at keys and coins, a bailiff's shoes clicked a metronome down the hall. Carlos wore the only armor that fit, clarity, and held Sophia's good hand while her fingers worried a small rubber rabbit the color of grape candy. Marcus Chin met them by the elevators with a folder fat enough to be called a spine. "We'll start with the restraining order," he said, voice steady. "Temporary custody, no contact, keys returned, codes revoked. Then we file the criminal packet with the DA." They sat beneath a brass clock that had seen 1,000 families try to remember how to be families. Dr. Walsh arrived in a navy suit, the look of someone who believes charts can protect children. Mrs. Hoffman carried a slim envelope with notes no one else had read, the kind teachers write at kitchen tables with shoulders hunched against what they know. Maria Santos came in her church dress, small and unafraid. "Estoy aquí," she told Sophia, squeezing her shoulder. "I'm here." Victoria entered last, lacquered and composed, a calm lake that had eels. Her lawyer's smile was a blade in polite packaging. She didn't look at Sophia, she looked at Carlos as if memory could still be currency. It wasn't. The first hearing was in a courtroom that felt almost kind, pale wood, soft bulbs, a judge whose glasses made her face look like a stern aunt's. Marcus spoke without drama. Your Honor, we're requesting a domestic violence restraining order on behalf of a minor, with immediate surrender of house access and an order prohibiting contact at school, medical offices, or third-party locations. We submit medical records, teacher observations, witness statements, and preliminary findings from a child psychologist. He offered the packet. Papers whispered across the bench. Victoria's counsel tried the old door first. This is a family in grief. My client provided structure during a destabilizing season. Accidents happen. The judge didn't blink. Structure does not demand 12-foot shelves, she said, skimming a photo of the library with a measuring tape laid like a ruler across a lie. And grief doesn't move ashes with threats. She signed the order with a clean stroke. No contact. Surrender all keys, remotes, passcodes by 5 p.m. today. Violation will result in remand. Sophia did not testify in open court. The child advocacy suite was painted sky blue and smelled like citrus wipes, with a camera that did not loom. A forensic interviewer asked questions that opened doors without pushing. Sophia answered like she had practiced with Dr. Rebecca, facts, not apologies, feelings, not guesses. She said if I told Daddy, she would throw away Mama, Sophia whispered, eyes steady on the interviewer's friendly necklace. The words entered the record like a small, exact hammer. The district attorney, Elena Rodriguez, read everything twice and spoke once, the way surgeons handle knives. Patterns matter, she told Carlos in a glass-walled conference room. Frequency, similarity, delay in care, intimidation. This isn't a discipline dispute, it's endangerment and coercive control. The private investigators slid in a separate folder 3 prior relationships with widowers, each leaving a paper smell of suspicion if not charges. Past acts aren't ghosts, the DA said. They're maps. Arraignment was swift. Victoria pled not guilty, words spoken like a posture, and conditions snapped into place: stay away radius, surrender of passport, check-ins. Outside, a reporter lifted a microphone and asked for a comment. Marcus shook his head. Carlos lowered his voice to the only audience that mattered. Let's get ice cream, he told Sophia. She picked mint for courage. He picked vanilla because it holds what you pour on it. The criminal case grew like a careful building. Dr. Walsh wrote in the language of medicine, contusions described by location and stage, weight loss charted, effect noted as guarded, hypervigilant. Mrs. Hoffman's letter drew a child in sentences, once voluble, now withdrawn, sudden startle at ordinary sounds, a perfectionism that read like fear. Maria testified to absence disguised as structure, to the way a house can go silent around a child. Dr. Rebecca's report braided it all. The threats concerning the deceased mother's ashes functioned as a core coercive device, binding the child's grief to compliance. Victoria's counsel tried new doors when the old one jammed. Cultural differences and expectations. Miscommunication between adults. A gifted child who resists authority. The DA held up a photo of the repaired bracket, then the receipt for expedited hardware replacement the morning after the fall. Guilty people tidy fast, she said, not unkindly. Innocent people gather help. Before trial, they sat through a settlement conference. The DA laid charges like cards: felony child endangerment, misdemeanor assault, 2 counts of intimidating a witness, even if the witness was small and lived at the same address. There was talk of maximums and minimums, of guideline ranges, of the difference between punishment and deterrence. Victoria stared at the table, a woman doing math with years. Her lawyer leaned in. Pride wrestled with probabilities, probabilities won. She signed a plea that would write 5 calendars in one color and change the rest in another: 5 years in state custody, post-release supervision, permanent prohibition from childcare employment, protective order made permanent, mandated therapy in a program that teaches people the names of what they did. Sentencing day was quiet. The judge spoke to record and to soul. Children are not instruments for adult grief, she said. They are not screens where you project control until the picture suits you. She adopted the plea, added restitution for medical and therapeutic costs, and looked at Sophia directly. You told the truth. The court heard you. A gavel tapped, not dramatic, simply final. They stepped into sunlight as if someone had dimmed the past one notch. On the courthouse steps, Carlos knelt. You were brave, he told Sophia. Braver than I was for a while. Thank you for finding me. She touched his face with the hand that had been purple and smiled like the first page of a new notebook. We found each other, she said. Back home, the mail contained a delivery notice. The rolling ladder had arrived for the library, the one with locks that snap like responsible punctuation. Carlos installed it that night with Maria handing him bolts and Sophia reading the instructions like a foreman. When the ladder clicked into place, Sophia tried one step, then another, then stopped where her feet could still tell the floor a secret and smiled. Not today, she said, climbing down. Power, she was learning, includes the right to wait. In the kitchen, the chalkboard charter gained a new line in slightly messy print, 16, court light is still light. Maria underlined it twice. Carlos taped the final court order inside a cabinet door, not as a threat, but as a monument to promises kept. They ate rice and chicken and told bad jokes until the evening felt like a place you could live. Later, the house exhaled in its soft, domestic way, dishwasher hum, the faint shiver of palm fronds against glass, the piano lid settling. Sophia set the rubber rabbit on the mantel beside her first-grade painting and said, to no one and to everyone, we did a hard thing. The chandelier threw little stars onto the ceiling that didn't need to hide in corners anymore. And when sleep came, it came like something earned. Healing didn't arrive like a parade, it showed up as a schedule on the fridge. Sunday ice cream. Monday therapy. Tuesday library hour with the ladder locked. Wednesday dinner with Maria. Thursday piano. Friday movie night. Saturday something outside, beach, park, garden, anywhere the air didn't remember old voices. The chalkboard charter beside the calendar grew a little every week in Sophia's neat print and Carlos's block letters. People before things. Truth before comfort. Food together when we can. No shoes on the piano rug. No secrets that make you small. We ask before touching. We pause before decisions. We repair what we break and what breaks us. They practice the rules the way you practice scales, slowly, kindly, again. Mornings began with a check-in at the kitchen island. Carlos made oatmeal too thick the first time, then perfect the fifth. Green, yellow, or red, he'd ask, tapping the chart Dr. Rebecca had suggested. Green meant good to go. Yellow meant go slow. Red meant this day needs careful feet. Sophia learned it was allowed to be any color. On red mornings, drop-off came with extra minutes in the car and a promise on paper in her pocket, call me and I will come. At school, Mrs. Hoffman noticed the small returns first, a quick hand up, the first laugh in months, a book report written with a doodled treble clef in the margin. The guidance counselor helped set a quiet corner where Sophia could breathe when alarms went off inside her body and the classroom had no idea. I'm taking a yellow minute, she'd whisper, and the world made space. Triggers didn't stop visiting just because they were unwelcome. A smoke detector chirped at 2 a.m. and Sophia sat up so fast the room tilted. Carlos met her in the hallway with the lights low and his hands visible. 5 things you can see, he said softly, and counted with her, the painting of the sun she'd made in first grade, the blue edge of the rug, the clock, the rabbit on the mantel, the shadow of the banister. 4 you can touch. 3 you can hear. 2 you can smell. 1 you can taste. By the time they got to toothpaste, her shoulders had dropped. He changed the battery, then left the cabinet door open so she could see the new one sitting inside like proof. They made chores into belonging instead of tests. House reset, Maria called it, a gentle half-hour after dinner with music on low. Sophia wiped the table, Carlos took the dishes, Maria told a story about the town where she grew up, where neighbors measured weather not by temperature but by how far the smell of tortillas traveled. The rolling ladder in the library lived latched to its rail, while locks snapped like punctuation. On the first Saturday, Carlos demonstrated, feet on the lowest rung, 1 hand for you, 1 for the rail. If you need higher than this, we do it together. Sophia climbed 2 steps, then climbed down, then smiled at choosing to wait. Grief didn't vanish, it learned manners. Sundays at the cemetery came with flowers and a thermos of hot chocolate. They told Elena about the small victories, the green day at school, the joke that made them both spill water, the lemon bars that came out just right on the second try. On the way home they drove the long way past the beach. Sophia started a seashell jar on the piano, white arcs, pink spirals, a tiny gray one that looked like a comma. On Thursdays, the music room warmed up before dinner. The metronome ticked patient as rain. Scales first, then pieces with names that sounded like weather. Carlos sat close, not as a guard but as a witness. When a measure snagged, Sophia tried again, and learned the kind of persistence that isn't punishment. After practice, they shut the lid together, hands side by side in the middle octave, and the piano seemed to breathe out. Some repairs required more than lists. The first time Carlos asked, "Can you tidy your room?" Sophia froze mid-step, apology already rising. He caught it before it formed. 15 minutes, timer on, he said, setting his phone and kneeling to soar with her. If we don't finish, we don't finish. Future US can help. They folded shirts that once held other afternoons. She kept 2 dresses Elena had loved and let the 2 small things go in a bag she labeled in careful marker, for a girl who needs them. The house learned to laugh again in small, embarrassing ways. Carlos misread a recipe and doubled the garlic. Sophia declared the kitchen legally inedible and ordered emergency cereal. They ate on the back steps while the sky did its orange trick and the garden remembered how to smell like itself. The roses recovered. So did the child who clipped them, thorns and all. Community wove itself back in. Maria stayed for Alleluias on Wednesday nights, little hallelujahs offered over stew and rice. Mrs. Hoffman visited one Saturday with a paperback about a stubborn heroine and left with 2 lemon bars wrapped in foil. Dr. Rebecca sent home a glitter pen and a challenge: write 1 brave thing a day. Brave can be small. Sophia wrote, sat by the window at lunch. Told Daddy I needed help with math. Closed my door when I wanted quiet and it was okay. They added new lines to the charter. Ask for help early. Rest counts as work. We name the good out loud. We don't hurry tears. Laughing is allowed at breakfast. If you forget a rule, we try again. The house is on our side. On a breezy Saturday, they took the outside square of the schedule to the beach. Sophia's wrist, now stronger, threw a kite into a sky that wanted it. The string tugged. She let it pull a little, then held steady. It's like the wind is a friend, she said, surprised by her own metaphor. A bossy friend, Carlos answered, grinning. They built a lopsided sandcastle and defended it against the tide with spoons. When the walls fell, it didn't feel like failure. It felt like a lesson only water knows how to teach. A note arrived from the school office: talent show sign-ups. The paper sat under a magnet for a day while both of them pretended not to watch it. On Thursday, Sophia leaned on the counter, cheeks pink. If I played, would you be scared for me? She asked. I would be proud for you, Carlos said, and meant it more than he could explain. She circled yes in pencil and then, because she could, traced over it in glitter pen. That night, they walked past the library. The repaired bracket caught the lamplight like a healed scar you don't hide because it tells the right story. We could hang something there, Sophia said. Not a warning. A reminder. She drew it at the table, a small sign with a treble clef and a sentence they both repeated until it belonged to them: we climbed together. Bedtime came clean. Sophia brushed her teeth to a song that counted seconds and spit into a sink that did not yell back. Carlos stood in the doorway, the way fathers do when they are learning to be both door and welcome. Tomorrow is yellow for me, Sophia said, honest as a weather report. Then we go slow, he replied. He turned off the light and left the hall lamp on, enough brightness to keep the corners honest, enough dark to let sleep find its way. The house, keeping their new hours, settled into its night sounds: palm fronds signing the windows, distant waves rehearsing their lines, the piano lid cooling. On the chalkboard, glitter dried on the newest rule, 16, courage is many small things, while the calendar beside it waited for the next square to be filled. Outside, the kite string dried on the porch rail, a thin white line that had held against weather. Inside, the child did the same. The sign-up sheet went home folded like a secret, talent show, 1 piece, 3 minutes, courage required. It sat under a magnet for a day while both of them pretended not to notice. On Thursday, Sophia set her glitter pen on the counter like a brave little sword. If I play Mama's piece, would you be scared for me? Carlos took the question the way a good catcher takes a fastball, soft hands, full attention. I'll be proud for you, he said. She circled yes, then traced over it until the word looked like a promise. The calendar got a star, the house listened. Practice moved from checklists to devotion. Scales first, left hand steady, right hand relearning trust, then the melody Elena loved, a simple thing with room for breath. The metronome ticked like rain on a roof you've repaired yourself. When a bar snagged, Sophia paused, breathed, 2 counts in, 4 out, like Dr. Rebecca taught, then tried again without apology. Carlos sat near, not correcting, only turning pages when asked. Maria polished the music room like a chapel and tucked a tiny saint card into the bench. 4 hands, she whispered. And hearts that want to be brave. The school auditorium smelled of dust and crayons and 1,000 small victories. Mrs. Hoffman unlocked it early so Sophia could meet the stage without strangers watching. Walk your path, the teacher said, tapping the floor from wing to bench. They practiced the route, 3 steps, breathe, small bow, sit, adjust bench, hands in lap until the world gets quiet. If you forget, Mrs. Hoffman smiled, the bench remembers. Carlos sat in row 3 and clapped softly after each invisible audience cheered. Rehearsal ended with a rule Sophia wrote herself, no rushing the beginning. The week before the show, alarms visited like weather. A dropped fork sounded too much like the old world. A hallway shadow felt too tall. Each time, they returned to the chalkboard charter, people before things, truth before comfort, rest counts as work. Yellow day? Carlos would ask, and Sophia would nod without shame. On yellow days, homework got shorter, hugs got longer, and practicing stopped at good enough. The library ladder stayed locked, the repaired bracket caught lamplight like a healed place that refuses to be a warning anymore. We climbed together, the sign read, exactly where eyes could find it. The night before, they laid out clothes in calm light. Not a costume, just a soft navy dress, white socks, a ribbon from Elena's sewing box that still held the smell of clean cotton and Sundays. The pearls stayed in their drawer, some bridges wait for later. Sophia taped a tiny note inside her case, 1, breathe. 2, hands heavy. 3, eyes up. 4, play for us. Carlos wrote his own on a sticky. Whatever happens is the story we wanted. They ate early, laughed at a crooked pancake for dinner, and watched the ocean turn coins of light. Sleep came honest, not perfect. Show day arrived carrying butterflies with small boots. The auditorium buzzed like a hive, parents rustling programs, a toddler negotiating with a grape, microphones making their polite thumps. Backstage, Sophia rubbed the rabbit's ear on her keychain once, then tucked it away like a completed ritual. The stage manager, a teenager with a headset and surprising kindness, knelt to eye level. When the red light stops blinking, that's your room, she said. Take it. Mrs. Hoffman squeezed Sophia's shoulder. We listen for the story under the notes, she whispered. Carlos took row 3, center, phone silenced, heart loud. Her name sounded smaller than she felt. She walked the path she had practiced, 3 steps, breathe, small bow, sit, bench adjust, and placed her hands where the piano remembers everyone. The first chord arrived clean, then the next, then a tremble where muscle memory met memory and the world tilted. A cough somewhere, a shoe squeak, the mind's unhelpful suggestion, stop. She did what she had written. 1 breath in, 2 beats, 1 breath out, 4, hands heavy, anchor found. She began the phrase again, not from panic, from choice, and something unlocked. The melody lifted like a kite that found wind. Halfway through, she glanced up and found two faces the piece had always been for, the man in row 3 whose eyes were glassy and steady, and the shape in her mind who used to hum this melody while making lemon bars too tart. She played not to prove safety but to inhabit it, soft on the second theme, sure on the cadence, patient through the rest where silence is a note. The final chord didn't crash, it settled, the way a good afternoon settles on shoulders that used to brace. She held the quiet, then bowed, small and real. Applause rose like warm weather. Backstage tasted like orange slices in relief. The stage manager bumped her fist. "Professional restart," she said, impressed. Mrs. Hoffman teared up in the way teachers do, half pride, half something like prayer. Maria, who had snuck into the back row after her shift, pressed a tiny cross into Sophia's palm. "Para tu musica," she murmured. Carlos arrived last, because he wanted everyone else to have their moment first. He knelt, mindful of the wrist that no longer wore purple, and kissed her hair. "You didn't just play," he said. "You kept a promise to yourself." Outside, on the steps where some families take photos to remember what bravery looks like from the front, they didn't pose. They sat. The sky was a new blue, the kind you only see after rain. "Do you think Mama heard?" Sophia asked, straightforward as weather. "Every note," Carlos said, and meant it beyond metaphor. They walked to the car without hurry, carrying programs, a ribbon, a day that had chosen them back. In the rear view, the school got smaller. Inside the car, something larger made room for itself and sat down. Home welcomed with soft lamps and the smell of lemon and sugar. The chalkboard charter got a new line in glitter pen, "Courage is many small things," and beneath it, in Carlos's careful print, "Bravery can restart." They placed the program beside Elena's box with a slice of lemon bar and the white rose that had become a punctuation mark in their days. "For both of you," Sophia said. The house took the offering the only way a house can, by holding it, by remembering it, by letting the piano breathe the last of the afternoon into evening. Later, in pajamas, with the metronome asleep and the ladder still locked, they walked the library one last time. The repaired bracket looked less like history and more like architecture. "Some scars are maps," Carlos said, surprised to hear the thought out loud. "So we don't get lost where we've already been." Sophia reached up, touched the sign they'd hung, "We climb together," and smiled the kind of smile that doesn't ask permission. "Tomorrow," she said, not a question. "Tomorrow," he agreed, and turned off the light that once hid corners. Bedtime brought a new ritual, one sentence each about the day, whispered into the dark. She said, "I didn't rush the beginning." He said, "You gave the ending room to land." The house hummed its ordinary night music, dishwasher, palm fronds, distant ocean rehearsal, and the child slept like someone whose hands had told the truth. Downstairs, Carlos opened his laptop, not for work but to draft an email he had been avoiding, a note to Dr. Walsh, to Mrs. Hoffman, to Dr. Rebecca, to thank them for putting bricks where a bridge needed to be. He stopped before sending, closed the screen, and walked to the music room. The piano sat with its lid half open like a story mid-sentence. He pressed one chord, the first Elena had taught him long ago, then another, not to sound good, but to be allowed. "We're okay," he said to the empty room, to the past, to the woman who had taught both of them how to hear. Upstairs, as if answering, the softest footstep turned in sleep. The night kept them. Tomorrow waited where it always waits, on the other side of a door that now means welcome. The morning the foundation papers came back approved, the house smelled like lemon and printer ink. Carlos slid the stamped documents from a manila envelope and read the name twice, as if saying it carefully could make it truer, the Elena Martinez Foundation for Child Protection. He didn't cheer. He brewed coffee, called Maria to the kitchen, and set a plate with 3 lemon bars, one for each of them, and one they would take later to the carved box in the study. They ate standing up, soft crumbs on their fingers, a little silent, a lot certain. Carlos knew code and patterns. Grief had taught him how quickly patterns become cages when no one is watching. So the foundation built 2 wings, People and tools. The People Wing funded training for the adults who see children first: teachers, nurses, coaches, custodians, receptionists who notice who lingers and who won't meet a gaze. The Tools Wing, sketched in pencil at the kitchen island and then in real wireframes, was a simple stack with a fierce purpose. They called it Lantern. Lantern wasn't designed to spy, it was designed to listen. A secure, anonymized clearinghouse where small signals, clinic notes about frequent falls, teacher logs about sudden withdrawal, a school nurse flag about bruises that didn't match playground math, could sit beside each other long enough to be seen as one sentence instead of 3 unrelated words. Dr. Walsh reviewed the medical schema, Mrs. Hoffman wrote the teacher prompts in plain, kind language, Dr. Rebecca built the green, yellow, red check-in slider that made sense to a 9-year-old and an overworked counselor at the same time. At the bottom of every screen, in friendly letters Sophia chose, Lantern repeated a rule from their chalkboard: no secrets that make you small. They piloted Lantern with a single school and a single clinic. The training day felt like church without hymns, a gym full of folding chairs, fluorescent lights, and people who had already seen more than they could say. DA Elena Rodriguez opened with case law and then stepped aside. Carlos spoke next about patterns and how machines can help keep promises. He explained deduplication, privacy, warrants, and why the system would always default to the child. Then he offered the part he had never practiced. My daughter is safe because someone finally asked the right question the right way, he said, looking toward the bleachers. We're here to help you ask it sooner. Sophia had asked to speak and then changed her mind 3 times. When the microphone reached her, she didn't give a speech. She held it like a seashell and said one sentence she had written in glitter pen on a sticky note: find the adult who listens the first time. The room went quiet in the way that means everyone has made a private promise. Maria led the applause, strong and bright. Lantern earned its name in week 3. A school nurse logged a 3rd accidental wrist sprain on a 9-year-old boy, call him Mateo, paired with new stomach aches on PE days and a teacher note about flinching when someone raised their voice. The system nudged a counselor in the pediatric clinic, the counselor scheduled a gentle conversation, the clinic documented a pattern, the DA's office coordinated a wellness visit that arrived with compassion instead of sirens. It wasn't cinematic. It was careful. Mateo's mother cried like a glass breaking and then like a river. His stepfather left in cuffs. The counselor walked Mateo through a green-yellow-red morning for the first time. Later, Mrs. Hoffman texted Carlos a single sentence: Lantern worked. At home, success didn't feel like headlines. It felt like more chairs at Wednesday dinner, the guidance counselor one week, a social worker the next, Dr. Walsh and scrubs who arrived late and ate quickly and still told Sophia she played legato like sunlight. The chalkboard charter added new lines that weren't only for their house anymore. Court light is still light. We share what saves us. We forgive ourselves for not knowing sooner. We keep learning. Sundays kept their rhythm: cemetery flowers, hot chocolate thermos, the long beach road. The seashell jar on the piano grew odd and beautiful. Sophia named them like friends: the comma, the ear, the little moon. On Thursdays, the music room still ticked with the metronome's patient mercy. Carlos learned a left-hand part so he could play the lower notes while Sophia braided melody above him. They weren't a duet so much as a conversation. One afternoon in late spring, a package arrived addressed in Dr. Rebecca's looping hand. Inside lay Sophia's purple cast, cleaned and sealed, mounted in a shadow box with a tiny brass plate, evidence of healing, retired but never denied. They hung it in the library near the rolling ladder, not as a shrine to pain but as proof that bones and families can set. The repaired bracket gleamed in the lamplight. Beside it, their sign still read: we climb together. Letters began to appear in the foundation's inbox, teachers asking for training slots, a nurse who wanted a Lantern pilot in her rural clinic, a coach who had 2 kids on his roster he couldn't stop thinking about. One letter was different, a father who wrote in halting sentences from a library computer, ashamed he had missed what was happening while he worked double shifts. I thought providing money was the same as being there, he wrote. Carlos printed the email and placed it under a magnet beside their charter. "I understand," he wrote back. "Come by Tuesday night. We keep a chair." Summer found them in the garden, knees dirty, elbows sun-warmed. The roses came back stubborn and forgiving. On the day one bush exploded into pinks Elena would have clapped at, Sophia turned to Carlos with a thought she'd been carrying like a stone in her pocket. "Could we bring Mama's piano students here sometimes? Like a Saturday morning? We could make cocoa and I could help them practice the easy pieces." Carlos didn't check his calendar. "Yes," he said, and meant yes the way promises want to be meant. On the first Saturday, 3 children arrived with shy eyes and sheet music. Sophia showed them the bench ritual, hands in lap until the room gets quiet, and they played Ode to Joy slow and proud while the house learned a new sound, beginners believing. The foundation's first public fundraiser was small, a school auditorium, string lights, cookies on folding tables. They didn't sell tragedy, they sold training and time. D.A. Rodriguez told a story about a teacher who called early. Dr. Walsh spoke about bruises, not as sensational marks but as quiet data points that need neighbors to make sense. A mother who had fled thanked an app she didn't understand and a counselor who did. Sophia walked up at the end wearing Elena's ribbon in her hair and said, "Thank you for the ladder with locks." People gave. Not because the presentation was perfect, but because the truth was. Not every day glowed. There were mornings that started red for no good reason, afternoons where a smell or a sound pulled the body backward without asking permission. When that happened, they practiced what the charter promised: rest as work, truth before comfort. Carlos canceled meetings. Maria made lentil soup that tasted like taking a breath. Sophia lay on the living room rug and watched the ceiling until the chandelier's shadows looked like a soft net instead of a web. News stories occasionally called. Carlos declined interviews that wanted villains more than solutions. He said yes to one quiet article about pattern tools and privacy, about building systems that refuse to confuse control with care. The journalist sat at the kitchen island and asked about Elena. Carlos told her Elena's laugh refused to stay in photographs and kept escaping into rooms. Sophia brought lemon bars on small plates and corrected the recipe myth. "They're supposed to be this tart," she insisted, and the journalist wrote the line down because sometimes detail is where belief begins. A year to the month after the library fall, they held a small gathering not in a banquet hall but in the music room. The people who had built the bridge came, Dr. Walsh with her calm eyes, Mrs. Hoffman with that kitchen table envelope of first notes, Dr. Rebecca with a glitter pen tucked behind her ear, D.A. Rodriguez with a laugh that cleared corners. Carlos raised a glass of sparkling water. "To the ones who asked early," he said. Maria added, "To the ones who will ask tomorrow." Sophia set the shadow box with the purple cast on the piano and pressed one key for each person who had helped, a counting song that sounded like gratitude. Later, when the house was quiet, they walked the library one last time before bed. The repaired bracket, the ladder, the sign, none of it felt like a museum anymore. It felt like a home that had learned its lines. Sophia touched the sign and then her father's sleeve. "We kept it," she said. Carlos nodded. "We'll keep keeping it." Before lights out, they added one final rule to the chalkboard charter, written in 2 hands at once, hers a little slanted, his block steady. "Love is the safety that lets truth speak." They stood back and read the list the way people read maps before a good trip. Then they went to the study, placed a lemon bar and a new white rose beside the carved box, and whispered goodnight like a secret they no longer had to guard. The chandelier still threw tiny stars onto the ceiling, but the corners didn't need watching anymore. The house held what houses are meant to hold: footsteps without fear, music that starts again if it needs to, laughter at breakfast, rules written where everyone can see them. The library kept its ladder locked unless 4 hands turned the catches. The piano learned every version of beginning. What started as a fall from a high shelf became a family that refuses to fall alone. What started with a threat against ashes became a quiet army for the living. What started in shadows now walks in rooms where the light stays. And when people ask Sophia how a house becomes safe again, she doesn't need a speech. She points at the sign in the library, at the charter by the door, at her father's open hands, and answers the way all brave endings should. Together.